but I find it quite disappointing when influencers and content creators do misuse this term activation, or basically promote that you can activate a muscle that's essentially turned off, when that's largely not the case and largely not true. We're actually tickling something slightly different today. And obviously a lot of the content I produce on my channel is obviously covering my thoughts and opinions on other creators, be that home workout creators or more gym environment creators, you know, things along those lines. And obviously I've covered Caroline a few times in the past, and I've actually covered some other people here and there as well. I often get a lot of messages or comments saying either, who would you recommend, this person or that person, or maybe who do you think would be better for me based on my goal, this person or that person, or maybe I found this person's workouts a bit too difficult, would this person be a good alternative? And that kind of got me pondering. Although I have looked at the creators like Caroline, Sydney, Heather, etc. individually, I've never directly compared their workouts or compared their content and given my opinion on who I believe is better for XYZ and who's better for ABC. And that's kind of what we're going to do today. The two we're looking at are the two obviously most popular ones that have been either most commented or most sent to me on the DMs. Caroline, she's always popping up in my DMs. I'll often ask about my opinion on her latest like leg workout or something similar. And another person who's actually been popping up a lot more recently is Sydney Cummings. And obviously she's now very pregnant. And a lot of people actually ask my opinion on her workouts for pregnancy. So this seems like a pretty good opportunity to kind of throw that into the mix as well. That's what we're going to do. But before we do so, you know obviously what must be done. If at any point you decide you like the video, please let me know you like the video by liking the video. 1,300 likes is the goal, so if we reach out, that'd be bloody splendid. I would very much appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider clicking the red button down below to subscribe to the channel, and maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, please do consider dropping it down below for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Obviously, it's not really a hat today, but it's something that's a bit cooler because it's bloody warm again. It's killing me. Selena Gomez on the t-shirt, bunny ears on the head. What a dream. Another thing I want to throw in there very quickly is in the description box, you'll see a link to a Google form or like a Google sheet. If you have any original content ideas or just video ideas in general, please don't hesitate to click the link and submit them through the Google Sheet. Then I can compile all your ideas and put them into the video idea list. So I've tried to find two somewhat similar or comparable workouts so I can kind of do a bit of a comparison analysis between the two. And that's why we're going to look at Sydney Cummings' 30-minute legs superset workout and one of Caroline's recent 30-minute superset quads workout. So obviously quads being part of the legs, both of them same duration being 30 minutes, both of them superset dominant. A superset is essentially doing two movements back to back, resting after the second movement. I think both of these creators are bloody fantastic. I'm a big fan of Caroline and a lot of what she's doing, especially the recent video I did of her maybe a month ago. I thought she's bloody smashing. I was really impressed with that video. And also Sydney, although like I said, I haven't looked at her for a fair time. A year ago or so when I did last look at her, I was also very impressed with what she was doing back then. I've already gone through the videos a couple of times, so I won't show you the whole hour of footage, but we'll skip through a few exercises per and kind of give my overall analysis at the end. Obviously, we're going to start with Caroline. We're going to have a look at her superset quad workout. One of the things I really do like about this is obviously you see Caroline's doing a pause squat. I love a good squat, I love a good pause squat. In the last video I spoke about how quads are one of the muscle groups that really benefits from something called stretch mediated hypertrophy. It's essentially lengthened position dominant movements. And squats, for example, are a lengthened position dominant movement. So not only is she choosing a bloody fantastic movement, being the squat, she's also pausing at the bottom here. So she's pausing in that lengthened position, therefore spending more time in that preferred and maybe most important position being the bottom here, which is a bloody great time when you look at hypertrophy. I'm not saying you have to pause your squats, but doing so, it can really be beneficial when looking at developing the quads, and doing so can also make the squats a bit harder, which is why she's supersetting the pause squats with regular squats, because pause squats are typically going to be harder than regular squats, because obviously you're maintaining tension for a longer period of time, you have no momentum, you're kind of killing it with the pause there. All those good bits and bobs. So this is going to be a particularly difficult superset, but also a pretty solid one. And obviously I know I've expressed my thoughts before on supersets, how I'm not a massive fan of them when looking at hypertrophy, but that's very much goal dependent. I feel like if you're doing Caroline's workouts, your primary purpose is not optimizing how much muscle you can build. You probably want to have a good workout, build some muscle, burn some calories, and lift some weights, which Caroline nails very well. In that case, especially with home workouts taken into consideration, I feel like supersets definitely have more of a time and a place here. Therefore, I think that is a pretty spicy and solid superset from Caroline. Also, you look at her depth. weight. Again, when looking at the quads specifically, you're looking at essentially getting as deep as possible. If you were looking at maybe targeting the glutes, you wouldn't need to stress about going as low, but like I said, when looking at the quads, which we are here, you want to get as deep as possible, thus fully lengthening the quads. I spoke about lifting shoes early in the week and just elevating the heels in general. Doing so typically allows you to squat deeper, thus lengthening the quads even more. So again, if I had to choose between a regular squat and a heel elevated squat for the quads, I would typically choose this heel elevated squat because I think it's a bloody fantastic alternative, especially with that pause at the bottom. Oh, a bloody split squat. So she's referring to this as a Bulgarian lunge when it's actually more of a dumbbell split squat. The elevation is quite high. Typically I would say that elevation is too high. Again, depends on the person. So for me personally, I would usually go off like a 6 to 8 inch platform if you have one. And again, if you want to further enhance how quad dominant it is, chuck something under the front heel to obviously allow you to get a bit deeper and stretch the quads out even more, and you'll have a bloody great time. But I'll tell you one thing, supersetting split squats with a weight with split squats with no weight is bloody nasty and is I would say borderline evil, because split squats are horrible at the best of times. Supersetting split squats with split squats sounds like a torture technique that I would not wish upon my worst enemies. Being limited to how much you can do for the quads at home, I'm not surprised to see another squat variation here being the goblet squat. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of the goblet squat. I feel like in the home gym environment, it certainly has more of a place. I would almost consider doing the wall sit first and then supersetting the goblet squat afterwards, because you can quite easily take the wall sit to failure because you essentially just stay there until you can't go anymore. Although I understand this is timed here, but it's definitely a consideration of wall sitting to failure. So let's say that's 45 seconds or a minute, falling to the floor safely, obviously, getting up and then going to the goblet squats, because now we've pre-exhausted the quads here. That may better allow us to take the quads closer to failure using something like the goblet squat without something like the shoulders, the arms or the core maybe holding us back as much as they typically would. But I understand because it is time limited here, doing the goblet squat first and then the wall sit after may allow you to actually better take the wall sit to failure. So either works, it's just preference really. I think I would probably typically favour a wall sit then into the goblet squat if it wasn't against the time limit. So now we're obviously looking at Sydney Cummings and her 30-minute leg superset workout. Again, like I said, another leg and superset workout. We're going to mix and match them together, see what occurs. Sydney is very pregnant, which is bloody fantastic to see. I know I have mentioned this many moons ago. I do think working out while pregnant can be really beneficial for the whole pregnancy process. And working out while pregnant is often actually quite avoided by a lot of people, unfortunately. But like I said, I do think it would be really beneficial, although you will probably have to alter and change what exercises you do or how you do them for the safety of yourself and the safety of your baby. So the one thing you'll immediately notice with Sydney's workouts is some of the movements will be very similar to what Caroline has shown. So for example, we have the goblet squat here, and her technique, largely due to the pregnancy, is likely going to be very different to Caroline's. So she may have to lean forward a bit more, she may also not be able to go as deep, therefore not lengthen the quads as effectively, but that's absolutely fine, because at the end of the day you have to work within your own limitations and essentially do whatever your body allows you to do at any given moment. I guess there's a bit of an argument of what this is because technically you're going from the floor up. This goes through a very similar range of motion to a sumo deadlift, but it also is largely considered a sumo squat because you're in this wider sumo stance. One of the things I really like to see there is look at Sydney's shin angle. So when she reaches a bottom position there, the shins are pretty much bloody vertical, which I think is fantastic. That's a pretty, in a lot of cases, a good display of solid mobility, a good stance for her leverages. So I think if you went wider, her knees would maybe cave. But also one of the issues with movements like this typically would be limited range of motion, as you can only go so low before your dumbbell hits the floor. But obviously considering Sydney is with child, it would make sense for her to limit that range of motion, because typically going arse to grass, for lack of a better term, could be problematic. Now we're looking at more of a glute superset. So obviously we do have some knee flexion extension, so the quads are getting involved. But with this band, we're encouraging a bit of external rotation, and we're also encouraging a bit of abduction too, which implies that this is going to be a bit more glute focused, this superset. And we're also supersetting it with these kind of crab walks, or this crab walk variation. When looking at most movements, or a lot of just standard resistance-based movements, I don't necessarily think including a band around the legs is necessary. But if you are doing a home workout and you do want to include a bit more glute work when you are limited to equipment, because you may not have access to certain machines and all that good stuff, then I think including a band like so is definitely a consideration. But personally, I do feel like crab walks are a movement that, again, is very sensation-based rather than effectiveness-based. I think typically a lot of people do this as like a pre-exhaust, quote-unquote, activation movement, which is actually what I'm going to get into for comment question of the week. But the reality is a crab walk is probably not something I would typically choose to do myself, but it may have a bit more of a time and a place for things like prehab and rehab. And again, very similar to what we saw Caroline do, is here we have a Bulgarian split squat. The big thing about the split squat here is, I think something where a lot of people maybe fall short, is I think a lot of people often place too much weight on their back leg, the kind of resting leg here. So in reality, about 90 to 95% of your weight should be on this front foot here. That last 5 to 10 should be resting on the back leg, because the back leg is primarily there for stability. Granted, when you are going down, you are going to be lengthening the rec fem, as I did cover in Monday's video. The primary purpose of that back leg is more stability rather than exerting force against resistance. Step up, fantastic movement. Caroline did actually include step ups at the end of her last workout, but I chosen not to cover it because I didn't want to take too much of your time, to be honest. Step ups can be a good movement, but the big thing to remember here is when doing a step up, if you are looking at placing more emphasis on the quads, you essentially want to make the box or the step in which you're stepping up to as high as possible, because that then allows you to lengthen the quads as much as possible. Whereas if you were doing more of like a glute dominant step up, which I feel like this is likely, is you typically probably wouldn't want to go beyond 90 degrees at the knee. So here would near enough be fine, because beyond that you may be shifting more of the focus away from the glutes and more to the quads, and considering this is a full leg workout rather than just a quad workout, it does make sense to include more of a glute dominant step up, because it's going to be supersetted with a quad dominant movement afterwards. As you can see here, being heel elevated squats. Typically with kind of heel elevated squats, the raised heel implies that it's going to be more quad focused, or the primary purpose is additional quad focus. And Sydney has taken a wider stance here, whilst also limiting range of motion, largely due to the fact that she is pregnant. But if you weren't pregnant and you were really trying to bring in those quads and do what you can for them, is I would typically take a narrower stance, turn the feet out slightly, and bury your bottom as close to the floor as possible, like Caroline was doing in her heel elevated squats. But you've got to work around your body and what's going on with your body at any given moment. And like I said, I think it's bloody fantastic that Sydney is focusing so much on resistance training and workout even while pregnant. I think I'd love to see that. I think it's a great message, and it really encourages people to consider the maintenance of activity whilst carrying a child. But one of the things I did notice, again, it could be a consideration due to pregnancy and maybe lower back fatigue that could be occurring here, is there was a distinct lack of hamstring work. So I've spoken before about potential considerations for hamstring work at home. So she could do some maybe anterior loaded good mornings if she could get the dumbbells into a good place. She could do some dumbbell RDL, so Romanian deadlifts. You could look at doing some towel slides to replicate like a leg curl variation, which might be a better alternative for somebody who is with child. But this is almost less of a leg workout and more of like a quad and glute workout, because the hamstrings were, I don't want to say forgotten about, but kind of just pushed a bit to the side. But like I said, that could be due to the fact that a lot of hamstring work when at home is going to be very lower back dominant or lower back taxing, and when you are pregnant that may be particularly difficult for you to endure due to the fact you probably already have a pretty tender lower back at the best of times, because you're literally carrying a child in front of you. So I think that's very fair and very understandable. But if you were able to, I would certainly consider increasing the amount of hamstring work involved. But as a whole, I think it's another bloody splendid workout, and it's great to see. But then that begs the question. You say, well, Harry, you've looked at a superset workout from Sydney, you looked at a superset workout from Caroline. Who would you recommend? I think ultimately both creators are good for their own things. I think everybody has like almost, I say, lack of a better term, pros and cons, but ultimately it does come down to your personal preference and what your goals are. I feel like Caroline could potentially, again, depending on the workout you're observing at the time, be better suited for more intermediate to advanced fitness enthusiasts, whereas Sydney, again, depending on the workout, may be better suited for more beginners to intermediate, because typically from what I have seen, this is not just based on this workout alone, but based on some of the other workouts I have seen from both of these creators, is that Caroline's workouts do typically tend to be a bit more intense, a bit more taxing, and a bit harder work, which is actually a comment I see quite a lot of times where people say that they weren't able to keep up with Caroline's workouts because they found they were just a bit too difficult for where they were at their current stage in their fitness journey, which is absolutely fine. I think her workouts are bloody hard. And although I think Sydney's workouts are also very hard, they may not necessarily be as hard as Caroline's could be, again, depending on the workout you're observing. But this kind of disclaimer applies to everything. Depending on the workout you're looking at, I feel like Caroline's workouts were typically a bit more resistance-based, whereas Sydney's workouts may have a bit more of a mixture between resistance and bodyweight movements. Whereas, like I said, Caroline's are often very resistance dominant, especially when looking at her previous series, like the Iron series, which I know was very resistance heavy, which is fantastic. The kind of conclusion is, I think both of these creators are bloody fantastic, and I think ultimately who you choose really depends on who you prefer. They have different workout styles. Caroline really just cracks on with it and just goes through the workout. Sydney's maybe a bit more interactive, which some people may like, but some people may also not like. So it really just does come down to is which creator you prefer, which workout style you prefer, what your goals are, and also at what stage of your fitness journey are you at. Are you a beginner? Are you intermediate? Are you advanced? Are you more focused on calorie expenditure, in which case arguably go for either of these creators? Are you a bit more focused on resistance training? Arguably that I would maybe prefer or favor Caroline, depending on the series you're following, especially her Iron series. Are you a bit more of a beginner or an intermediate? Maybe Sydney might be better for you. Are you a bit more of an intermediate or advanced? Maybe Caroline might be better for you. Do you prefer people to interact with you a bit more? Maybe Sydney might tickle your pickle more. Do you prefer people just to crack on in front of you and you can just follow along with them? Then maybe Caroline might be best suited for you. It really does depend on what you're looking for from a creator and really what your goals are. I think both creators have a lot of good to offer. I think both creators are doing fantastic things. I think both creators can appeal and help a lot of people. So I love to see it. It's bloody fantastic. But now obviously we're going to crack on the comment question of the week. And I did actually answer this in the comment, but I do want to speak about it briefly in the video. What about warm-up isolation workouts like donkey kicks, etc.? I usually find people recommending to do them first to activate the muscle. So this kind of activation term is commonly overused and incorrectly used by content creators and influencers. For lack of a better term, activating a muscle is largely nonsense. If your glutes weren't activated, you would not be able to stand. There's almost like a misuse of the terminology. Activating implies that it's essentially turned off and you're doing something to turn it on. And like I said, if your glutes were turned off, you would find it bloody hard to stand. Whereas pre-exhausting a muscle would typically involve working the muscle via an isolation movement, so for example like a donkey kick or maybe a glute med kickback, before then moving on to your compound movements. So instead of going squats and then working down to your kickbacks, you might go kickbacks first before then going to your squats. Essentially what that does is kind of what it says in the tin, it pre-exhausts a muscle. So it pre-fatigues the muscle typically in its shortened position before moving on to a lengthened position movement, which can increase sensation. Pre-exhausting kind of has like a time and a place depending on goals, but that's something I'll get into another video. But when people say I really want squats but I can't feel it in my glutes, oftentimes they'll pre-exhaust the glutes, so when they go to the squats, the glutes are already pre-fatigued, therefore they can feel it a bit more. But as we know, sensation doesn't necessarily correlate to effectiveness. So just because you're maybe feeling the glutes a bit more doesn't necessarily mean they're working harder. It may just mean they're more fatigued, and in some cases it may actually mean that they could be holding you back even further. So again, it's very much a time and a place, but I find it quite disappointing when influencers and content creators do misuse this term activation, or basically promote that you can activate a muscle that's essentially turned off, when that's largely not the case and largely not true. That is it. That is the video. Like I said at the start of the video, if you like the video, please let me know you like the video by dropping a like on the video. 1,300 likes is the goal, so if we reach that, that'd be bloody splendid. I would very much appreciate it. If you haven't already, please do consider tickling the red button down below and subscribing to the channel. Maybe even the bell next to it so you get notified when I upload every week, twice a week. And if you too have a question you want me to answer at the end of the next video, please do consider dropping it down below for comment question of the week, and I shall do so. Thank you for tolerating me. Thank you for tolerating my unintentional focus on leg workouts at the moment, and thank you for tolerating the video.